As I was saying in the previous video, my mother always told me that if she had been born today, she would never have been married because she said she was forced by her mother and her father to get married. She didn't want to, and she didn't want to have a baby. That's to say, myself. So obviously, these regrets of hers did not exempt her from the belief that she was a better mother than many other naive ones who, at the first obstacle, left her husband and children and ran away to chase their dream. But how much of that frustration for his broken desire was hidden in the weakness with which she pointed her finger at me and assured me that if I had been in her place, I too would have bowed my head under the ancestral conformist yoke which forced all the country girls of the time to take a husband in their 20s. Well, the penalty for disobedience would have been the merciless grip of couriers and chatty relatives, the shame of the mother of a probably distorted daughter, the mailing voices of the district she lived in. Unable to resist all this, she said she would have succumbed to the courtship of her father, of my father. Something is not right in all this speech to me. Why uh, did she have a baby if she felt so constrained by convenience? And that why she chose that young man, my father, with such an unstable mind, a victim of his own mother's possessiveness, a vulgar and simpleton peasant, perhaps more than one of those rough peasants she was used to. I believe that's a detail that she herself has never stooped to admit played a decisive role in snatching her last consent, the economic interest, the desire to call herself a village woman to the detriment of her childhood friends, the desire to call herself a little town woman. She was born in the country yard, in a country yard, and she did want to be a woman living in a town. So decided, so she wanted to marry a man from a little town, from this little town, and she wanted to call herself a town woman to the detriment of her childhood friends, and maybe even to improve a standard of living up um, and to improve her status. Interest and greed have always been two balls in the foot of the woman, have always been two things bad, very bad things for the woman who gave me life. Out of interest and for the fear of losing the house and the maintenance of her husband, she forced herself to postpone the violence to which she subjected me, to denying her to the point of ridicule, and to become my executioner herself, for fear that I would destabilize the fragile domestic balance to which she had sacrificed her desire to be loved. So, I've been talking about my mother. Now let's talk about my father. My father had always had in common with their wife, the obsession with what his life might have been if he never succumbed to the imposition of his mother, the absolute ruler of his will, to marry and procreate, according to the prescription of every good civil life. From an early age, I was forced to listen to him complain about his wife to friends, relatives, parents, sisters, who had made him to I had who had made him do it, who had made him marry that rough peasant who, until the day of the wedding, had not even been used to having a bedroom in the house. He had had girlfriends of a very different kind. He was certainly a handsome boy, and he would not miss good parties. If he wanted to lead a bachelor life even better, all the money earned from his hard work would have been kept by him, without necessarily having to look after the family expenses and the costs of a life with with four other people, my mother and three children. But he thought he was the worst of fathers. Despite everything, he never left the house, and continued to financially support me, my mother, and my brothers without too many sins, even when he believed that we demanded a little too much for his modest salary as a civil servant. He was a station master. All this for the warning of his wife's parents, his wife's mother. It was always convenient to have a wife to run by instruction in the house, eternally submissive to her house, and only occupied with looking after children who would one day become the shoulder and cane of her son's old age. Too bad that the wife in question hated him. The children ran away once they reached the age of majority, the age of 18, and one of them became a little touched, and eternally need to care, little mad, and eternally, that was me, and eternally in need of care to keep himself alive. Oh, now, only very late I learned that for many father figures, a child learns first of all to feel strong in the world, to trust men, to always feel protected in order to have a foothold in times of difficulty and need. What was my father to me instead? He was a figure almost always absent for work or for his long afternoons at his parents' house, eternally in quarrel with my mother, verbally vulgar and moderately violent, crude in his ways and his approach to the world. I believe that the key to his psychic instability was an exacerbated immaturity, which found its undeniable cornerstone in the morbid bond with his mother. Completely devoid of strong intellectual qualities, Sono lacks an approximate morality of the most backward thought of Italy. He always tried to apply a further master mentality to his own family, which, however, needless to do it on purpose, he never succeeded perfectly to subject his family. Like a mother, he was perhaps not strong enough to carry out his insane plans of imposition. Perhaps he lacked the will to accomplish something really important in education as well as in the stability of his family. Although he had included 3 years of high school in his youthful curriculum, unlike my mother, who only took her 8th grade after she was 30, He never showed any marked fondness for culture. With an attractive appearance and inveterate as an inveterate Don Juan, he invested almost all of his adolescent energies in the search for partners who would satisfy his lust. Afterwards, the inflexible paternal grandmother managed my inflexible paternal grandmother managed to put him on the right path and force him to find a job. In this field, it cannot be said that he failed. He was, on the contrary, quite fortunate in finding a state employment in the right ways, in the right field, settling down at a relatively young age and adopt for decent marriage. The trait that makes my father most recognizable from all the other human beings I have known and analyzed in the course of his life is undoubtedly his indomitable, devastating hypochondria. I don't remember a single day when he confessed to feeling well or not suffering from some ailment. Every break from work is spent in bed. Every weekend from work is spent in bed with a headache, bondage, or at the doctor to complain of an annoying pain in his belly, or from his mother, or he went to his mother to apply pain-relieving backpacks. This hypochondria he had in common with his mother. Presumably, with the advancing old age, it will only go until it leads him to an end, marked by nightmares, terrors, and feelings of helplessness in the face of the inevitability of decadence and psychosis. So let's stop here from today, and in next video I will talk about my mother again. So see you in the next video.